Are you listening?
Hey fam, welcome to the Future is Here podcast. This is for the leaders, the dreamers, provocateurs, misfits, the frustrated frontline leaders who are charging in the kingdom. If you're tired of a reactive church, it's time to build a church we dream of now. The future is here, so don't get left behind.
Are you listening?
Let's get into it. Hey friends, welcome to the Future is Here podcast. I'm your host, Tommy Nixon. I'm here with one of my best friends, my best friend, right, Steve? Yes, there it is, man. I'm excited to share today. Today, we're going to be talking about the future is here. Now, for us at UYWI, we believe the future is young, it's urban, it's multi-ethnic. And not only do we want to take this time to make sure we're encouraging and caring for people during this crazy pandemic, we want to make sure people are thinking about the future and where the church and our movement is heading. And so we're going to be having these conversations with a number of different leaders. But I'm excited to have my man, Steve Carter, here. Now, Steve and I have known each other since we were 19 years old. I led Steve to Christ. I've been mentoring him. I'm just kidding, buddy. No, we actually went to college together, and we have been friends since, and we have walked life. Steve is also on our board of directors. He's actually the chair of our board, and so we're excited. He loves our movement. I know he loves me, and he loves this topic of church. And so, Steve, excited to have you on, brother. Thanks for your time, man. One of the reasons I had you on, today's topic is the end of the megachurch as we know it, I hope. And so we want to talk with you today, Steve, about what does it look like? What are your thoughts on the future of the church and coming from this space, this context of really, you were part of Willow. In fact, you were the man who took over. You were co-lead pastors at Willow, and you had your own experience there. And so I wanted you on because not only have you experienced the megachurch, I know your heart for the church, and I know your pastoral heart. And I also know that you've had some pain from the megachurch. So I wanted your just kind of unique insight onto what you think is going to happen. So if you can, man, can you give us a little bit of context of where you're coming from, your experience in the megachurch, and then we'll kind of get into what are some of your thoughts about where you think the church is moving forward.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me, and it's definitely an honor just to kind of be a partner with urban youth workers. And obviously, Tommy, I love you, and but really, the more that I get to see all that you and your team are just putting out, the resources, the way that it's just impacting in the stories, it's been a true blessing just to be a supporter, be someone on the sidelines, just cheering and championing the good, holy work of urban youth workers. For me, I grew up in Southern California. We met in college, and honestly, like a guy who was a mentor of yours. When you were a sophomore in high school, you kind of connected me to him when my parents came to faith and moved to Grand Rapids, Michigan. And so I got connected with Mars Hill in Grand Rapids. And that was, late 90s, early 2000s was the fastest growing church in American history. I mean, it just overnight went to 3,000, and within like 3 months was at like 10,000. I mean, just exploded. From there, I was there 7 years, kind of oversaw Cradle through college, and I was like on the executive team. I was teaching probably 8-10 times on the weekend, but then was offered to come back to Southern California to join the Rock Harbor, which is church probably, and again, just from size, I don't really care about it, but like just, I think helping people understand, it was about 6,000-7,000. It was in Orange County. And then I started a campus, kind of like, I called it more like a plantis, because it was part like campus, but it was really like you were on your own. And
is that copyrighted? Plantis?
It should be. It should be right now. Yeah, trademark. And so that was an amazing experience of just leading, and it was really young. I felt like the kind of culture of Fullerton. I mean, that's where you and I met. I mean, there was just so much life. But while I was at Mars Hill, I met Bill Hybels, founder at Willow Creek, and he just, was a mentor. And I always say, like, when I was at Mars, I learned a really compelling why. I learned about the kingdom of God. I learned about Jewish roots. I learned things about the local church that we used to say, if Mars Hill disappeared, like, who would cry? Like that's the point of the church. Like, the church exists for its non-members, not for the people that are in the pews. And so I go to Rock Harbor, and I felt like I learned this compelling how. I was really introduced to the Holy Spirit. And so this really response culture and worship culture. But both of those cultures, as beautiful and unique as they weren't leadership cultures. And I had seen beauty and I had seen brokenness in both of them. And then I had this opportunity to go to Willow, and Hybels reached out to me and basically said, hey, like, why don't you come report to me, be a director, you'll teach, and I'll just develop you. And so I was there about 6-7 years. And I got to see what scalability is. I got to see an organization that, is about $333 billion in assets. Like, context wise, the main facility sitting on like 120 acres, 890,000 square feet. And again, we can look at this from 40 years, but you got to look at it from like when it began in a movie theater, out of a youth ministry. Like, the first time that church began and they bought that land that Willow's at, 173 people showed up at a local bank and took out personal loans because they didn't have a denomination. They didn't have any of this stuff. They took out personal loans because they believed in a new kind of church. And it did a lot of great things. And I think that there's things that we're looking at today going, okay, that's helpful, and things that I think we need to kind of reimagine and innovate to move forward. And that's why I love Urban Youth Workers, because I think the things that you're speaking about, Tommy, the things that you're calling people to, the things that you're reminding people, young, urban, multi-ethnic, like empowerment, women and men, like working together. Like, there's just something in it that I think every time I hear you speak on it, I lead into it and go, gosh, that's the future.
No, that's so good, man. Mostly what I heard from you is that you kind of owe everything to me. I connected you. Was that what you were? I'm just playing.
Yeah. I think in a lot of ways, there's parts of my story that I have to unfortunately say, thanks God. Thanks God that you brought someone into my life that has caused me so much drama, that is so loud all the time. No, seriously, I look at it and go, dude, you're my best friend. And we have chopped it up for years and years and pushed each other and challenged each other. And what's so cool is, in one sense, I was in this mega church context, and you were like, you were in the streets, you were in the hood. And yet I think I was shaping some of the things in the way that you were leading. And you were shaping some things like, Steve, don't forget about this. And that was a real gift to me. And now I think kind of merging that together in the Urban Youth Workers movement, it's exciting to see what God's going to do now.
Yeah, man. And so walking with you through all that time and experiencing that, so I come from this place. Yeah. Like you said, I was in the streets and we're doing all this kind of like CDC, community development work. And we're just like living it out and just grinding it out. And so I was really skeptical. Right. And I believed in you. And I was like, dude, if anybody can do it, well, Steve can do it. But I was nervous and I get nervous. And I love how you bring that up about Willow, because when it started, it was like this movement. It was beautiful. And we know that old saying where it's like, it goes from movement to machine, right, to museum. And so, Willow was a machine, and most like mega churches I find are machines because they have to keep that up because it's just so many people and it's so many things. And yet it's out of that there's these parts of the machine that's what makes me nervous. And that's what I wanted to actually talk to you about, brother, because one, you've experienced it. And are there good things that come out of the megachurch? Absolutely, dude. Like I see God work. People come to Jesus. Like, even at Willow, like that whole, what was it called, brother? That whole community outreach piece. What was that?
Oh, the care center.
The care center, dude. Like incredible. And I go, man, you wouldn't have the resources to be able to do that. It was all volunteer led. Amazing stuff. At the same time, I also go, there seems to be a structure or a power structure within the megachurch that continues to chew people up and spit them out. And what I loved about what was so tragic for me, bro, was when you took over, I go, dude, I know Steve. I know he has the integrity. I know he has the balance with his own spiritual formation and presence of God to be able, and the leadership ability to be able to infuse that. And you started doing that at Willow. And I saw that, right? But then, one of the most painful things in your life, bro, like that whole thing goes down and you took the road of integrity. And so maybe some of our people don't even know, like we live in some of those different worlds, but, I don't, if you want to look it up, you can see what happened at Willow with Bill Hybels falling and all the stuff that Steve had you had to deal with and all that. And so what interests me is like, when I talk about the end of the mega church as we know it, my questions are, what is it that you experience and all that experience and all the goodness of it, but then all the reality of the difficult? What are you hoping for? Like maybe some self-correction. What are some of the things that you saw that were unhealthy that you're hoping that this time right now wakes the church up so that there's a self-correct? And what could be some of your hopes for the church coming out of this time? And what are some of the things, because I know you're a hopeful dude, you know what I mean? So what are some of the things that you're like, I actually really hope that the church wakes up in these spaces and it moves in a different direction?
Yeah, I mean, this is fascinating days because, I'm consulting with a number of churches right now. Yeah. And part of it at times is, I was on a staff meeting at 6:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time because they're in Chicago, and was on a phone call with them. And I'm listening to kind of the things in which they are engaging and looking to try and really walk with their people. I think part of the fascination that we have with buildings, it has been, Field of Dreams theology. If we build it, they will come. And this kind of thought, like, we are going to get people here. That is the most important thing. Get people in, fill the room. God can't do anything without with an empty seat. It's just kind of that's been the mantra. So you got to sell the weekend, sell the weekend, sell the weekend, sell the weekend, sell the weekend. And that's where that movement, the spirit of like mission to reach their city, see heaven invade that unique piece of real estate, became this monument of, dude, we got to protect it. We got to protect the investment.
Yeah. If you like what you're hearing, keep listening, but also make sure to check out our newest leadership resource, The Leadership Journey, by hitting up our website at uywi.org.
So what's been powerful now is you have this government order to not meet. And what it's doing, though, is it's forcing, I think, people to have to either be resilient, and they're going back. If you've got some sense of like youth ministry, youth work experience, what is it about? Relationship. What is it about? Connection. What is it about? Helping someone discover their identity, helping someone find belonging, helping someone recognize their purpose. We're talking about suffering and sacrifice. Like, the church right now is like on the horn, like reaching and talking to people, not just because they've walked through their doors, but they're reaching them on FaceTime, on Marco Polo, on Zoom. I mean, I got Zoom fatigue right now. It's like settled in. But I love the fact that it's pushing people from come to me back to I'm going after you.
Yeah.
That has been the gift. Now, I think on the flip side, though, What's scary for me, and again, personal story at Willow, a guy came up to me while I was still on staff there, real prophetic guy, like love his heart. And he said, Steve, I had a dream about you. And I was like, okay, tell me more. And he's like, I had this dream that you were walking on stage, and it was basically like they had totally manicured your face. You were like tan, you were all makeup, you were all just like, you looked perfect. You went up on that stage and it was like the fog machine was like tanning your face, and you looked great. And then you just like couldn't do it. And you just started like ripping it off. And you were like, this is who I really am. And the people didn't know what to do with it. And I think that's like the real conversation right now is, I think as everything is moving online, there are certain people who are being propped up. They're the ones in front of the camera. They're the ones who seem to have it all together. They all look a certain way. They all like have a certain vibe to them. They've got a certain kind of feel to them. Yeah. And if that internal spiritual like sense is not strong, we might not have a building, but we still have a platform.
Yeah.
And people just start building that platform. And instead of going after the people, to disciple the people, to shape the people, it's what can those people do for me, my brand, and what I'm doing. And so what the conversation used to be, how many people did you have in attendance this weekend?
Yeah.
Every weekend, I used to get those reports, and you'd feel like, oh man, that was a good weekend. Not because of how God moves sometimes, but because of giving an attendance, right? Yeah. Now it's like, I'm hearing dudes like talk, oh man, great weekend. We reached over 100,000 people online. and it's just a different switch of the metric. So I think we've got to get back to, and you've talked about this, Tom, and we've talked about this. It's what's going on inside, and how are we keeping the main thing, remaining in Christ, trusting he's going to bear the best kind of fruit out of us so that we can bear witness to what he wants to do through us, with us, for us, and even in spite of us, for the sake of our town and our city and our people.
That's good, man. So a couple things, dude, that I take out from what you said, man. And I think it'd be important for our listeners, man. One, I loved how you connected the movement of the church right now, and a movement of even megachurch right now is actually going back to what we all know in youth work. It's like that's where they're trying to go around and go, oh yeah, that's right. Those things were really important, right? And I love that. It's like, hey, wake up, guys. Like, first, we also know that 1 million young people are leaving the church every year. And I wonder, in a big sense, that is this a catalyst where is this going to exacerbate that? Or are we in a position to like actually receive some of those people back or engage them in a new way? Because in one sense, it's like we're moving from they weren't coming to the church anyway, by and large. In fact, they were leaving the church. Now we're engaging in their digital space. And so part of me is kind of like, I feel like a lot of mega churches, a lot of churches that were already prepared because they were already streaming, doing that. All they're doing is they're just taking what they did and they're just continuing to put it in a digital space. And those are the things that make me nervous, that I just go, dude, you're still missing it. And to your point, like we had 100,000, people come to our, engage in our service. I have a friend, he's going to be on another episode. His name is Jaime Puente, and he helps some churches actually dig into the actual data of all that, and discovered that this church had said they had, it was like something like 50,000 people or something like that. Well, when they looked at how many people actually stayed on the entire time, it was like in the hundreds. And so, but all that kind of, and so it's that system. And then those are the success metrics that we take. And that's the stuff that I'm like, oh, church, like, let's move away from that. You know what I mean? Like how do we take, like, where do we go from here? How do we take this opportunity to press into like more relationships, to really change the metric in some ways? Now, and this is weird to say to you, brother, and you know I love you, man. You're gifted as a communicator, but what I think saves you from this trap that we see a lot of communicators get in is that you have a pastor's heart. Like, you actually really care about, you're communicating for the people, right? Like, so that people can be pastored. And I get nervous about some of these systems because, you know, like you said, it becomes all about like the attendance and the money. But in that, it's kind of like where do we go from there as we move in, and we really want to see people come back to this place of relational. How can you do that when you have, 100, 10,000, 20,000? Like, where do we go from here? And what are the things that pastors should be thinking about engaging? How do you get back to that more relational piece? Do you have any thoughts like on that? Like, what do you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think in a lot of ways you've got to really take an honest look at your beauty and your brokenness as a leader. I mean, it's just true. There are some areas of my life that I'm very, very gifted at. Thanks be to God. Very strong at. Thanks be to God. And there are some areas in my life that I'm not. And Tommy, like, we've walked like and chopped it up for years and years and years. Yeah. And so the question is, then what are you going to do with that? The problem is when a movement begins, people get so captured, so moved by the movement. But then as it transitions over time into this monument, into this like kind of organization, then all of a sudden the people who had like sold everything, the people who had nothing, now over a couple of decades now have houses and mortgage payments.
Yeah.
And where they once used to be able to chop it up, now they're like, this has a cost.
Yeah.
So, and you're moving at a pace where something is growing, and the person who might have led a small group, you had put them in charge of now leading all small groups. That was never their gifting. So then they get forced out and they get hurt, but you find someone in and slide them in who's much better and who's just going to keep running until they can't do it. And you find someone else. And again, it just goes. And I think sometimes you just kind of feel like, oh, I feel sometimes leaders sometimes feel like they're a victim. Like, just so many people coming. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah.
It's just so many people. So many people want to meet with me. So many people. And so I think first and foremost, are you honest and human and transparent with your team? Do they know your weakness? Do they know the places in you that they're like, okay, this is when Steve's triggered. This is where Steve tends to go. Hey, this is like how we need to be able to tell Steve, you're not thinking straight. But when there's fear to say that, it ain't going to happen.
Yeah.
So you have that, but now you got to talk about the system. The banking system is going to create a loan. And you know what they're going to call the loan? And they're going to have a clause on it. They're going to call it the key man clause. So you know what that does is to get a $15 million, $20 million, $10 million, $5 million, the bank is going, who's the key man that if that person is gone, we're not going to get our money back, which puts a crazy amount of power on this one person who's now with his elder board going, I'll bounce. But then you're stuck with a $10 million loan because I'm the key man.
Yeah.
So if you don't have people in your life who are telling you where you're wrong, where you're off, where you're broken, and affirming where you're beautiful, you're only going to, the human tendency is to put people in your life who are going to affirm you and tell you you're awesome. And then secondly, you're going to have systems that are going to say, you're the key man. You're the key man. You're the key man. And again, let's take this straight to Comedy Central. Dave Chappelle season 3, episode 5. He tells a joke and the whole room dies laughing. He just signed a $50 million deal. He looks at some white guy who's laughing and the dude's laughing way too hard. Yeah. And he looks at the guy and he goes, that joke doesn't deserve that kind of laugh. And he freaks out. He walks off set, picks up his phone, calls his driver, said, pick me up. Driver goes, where do you want to take me? Take me to the airport. Goes to the airport, walks up, has his passport and goes, I want to go as far away as possible. Goes to South Africa, finds himself in a monastery. Everyone's like, where's Dave gone? Is he like cracked out of his mind? Yeah. And like every celebrity, 6 months later, he finds himself on a couch with Oprah and he's weeping. Yeah. And Oprah looks at him and goes like, why'd you do it, Dave? And he starts crying and he says these words, because success will take you places that character cannot sustain you. Mm. And I'm telling you what, that was a prophetic word. Yeah. And right now you have to understand there, whether you are an urban youth worker and you got 40, or you are a megachurch and you got 2,500, it don't matter. You got people who are putting something on you, but if your success is leading the way and your character is dragging far behind, it's only a matter of time.
Yeah, man. No, that's really good. So two things, man, 2 questions for you. One, what happens with, you brought up money and dude, so this is what I'm talking about. The system on this is so deep that even banks are a part of it. Right. Oh. And it's like
government's a part of it, bro. Oh, like if you got a church, I don't need to tell you how much I make. Oh, so like nobody knows what a pastor makes. And this is why massive organizations like Focus on the Family literally have shifted to call themselves churches. So then their CEOs don't have to unveil how much they're making. I'm just saying that there is protections in place so that you can keep the system at hand, which again has some perks, tons of perks, but on the soul, it's only a matter of time. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, dude. I mean, that's exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying like, dude, we've got to see how we can change the system. I want to take all the good stuff, bro. You know what I mean? Like, I want to be like, dude, I'm not here just to be like hypercritical, but I am here to say, dude, the structure, something's wrong with it. There's a power structure there that's not healthy. And we see that for all the metrics for pastors and what it does to us. I mean, dude, you were in that space. I remember, your whole story of just like, I think it was like Saturday night and some more stuff was coming out on Willow. And you were like, I can't do it. Right. Like for you to walk away from that was like mind blowing for a lot of pastors. Like, dude, no one does that. But what you did that I love courageously, that's why I got you on here and why I love you, is like, you were like, I'm not going to be a part of that system that you were stuck in. I'm not going to hold the line status quo because something's got to change. This isn't right. And that's the space where I'm like, how does this time frame that? So one of my questions for you, since you brought up the systems and money, what happens, Steve? And what are you seeing out there? Because you're in some big conversations with a lot of high quality leaders. What happens to all the buildings? Like, is the church, especially even we're talking about the megachurch, is the megachurch going to make it through this period? What are you seeing? What are you hearing? Like, what about buildings? What about these massive mortgages that people have, that churches have? What about the churches that can't turn the corner? Giving's down, all that. Like, give us some.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think there's multiple levels in this, right? So if you've got a church that has a ton of debt, mixed with not an organization that is not technologically up to par, and then the uncertainty of how long this goes. I mean, they're talking about the NFL season moving to like not starting in the fall, but moving into January. The thing that they're going to open up last are large gatherings. So they're going to open up essential businesses when COVID stuff happens. They're going to open up some small businesses. The last thing that they're going to open up is large gatherings. So again, if you've got like $20 million in debt and you are not able to hit and bring in money, well, then all of a sudden that system goes into shock. And so I think you might have some reserves. You might have a little help from the SBA. Like you might have some things that can get you through. Yeah. But man, there are some people who have been resistant of technology that I think it's going to come back to hurt them. And then there's other people who have been like ahead of it, who have been like telling stories. You know, you all have been doing this, telling stories. You've been in it, that I think you're going to be positioned better for it. I think that there are, and Kerry Newhoff said this recently, we were on a conversation together and he said, you know, I think unfortunately there's just going to be some places that don't make it. Yeah. There are going to be some that actually are able to thrive. And I think, again, this is going to showcase what organizations can turn on a dime, what organizations are lean enough, what organizations can handle the stress, and then what organizations are uniquely positioned because maybe they have key donors or they have some key stakeholders who can allow their runway to go longer. But again, one of the other things I'm hearing is a lot of pastors are talking about the days that they open up their doors. And we're talking large churches right now. Like I'm talking 20,000 person churches. They are talking about when you can open up, and maybe it's the fall, maybe it's early 2021, that they're thinking about not going back to normal, but almost planting the church again, which I thought was really brilliant in the sense of going, hey, we're going to have a preview service. Like we're going to have people gather and we're going to detail who we actually are, because you've almost got to coach people back in, but you've got to be clear on your values. You got to be clear on your mission. So here's my hope. My hope is that a movement that turned into a monument can take the best of them, of like the institutional leadership. And because of COVID and their desire relationally and hoping to have integrity, can move back to being a mission. Bro. Now, will people be able to do this? No. Will some be able to do it? Yes. And I think this is where I believe I put all my chips down is organizations like Urban Youth Workers, people who are doing stuff, you know, even where I live in Phoenix, in Oakland, some of the stories that I'm hearing about the leaders that you all are like working with. What do they have? They have resiliency. What do they have? They have character. What do they have? They have relationship and love with people. What do they have? They've been working on less than what other places have been able to have. And they're not working on multi-million dollars worth of debt. And so what can they do? They can stay on mission. And that is the future. That is why what you are saying is, and this is my hope, trying to get all these beautiful mega churches with all the money and resources and potential to get it back to where your people are leading and loving and showing us the way. I'll say this, one of my favorite dudes, Harvey Carey. He and I, he taught me about prayer. I just made him shake his head all the time, like when he'd look at me. And we just talked. And so when he was at Salem Baptist on the south side of Chicago, you know, Tommy, when you and I were there, we walked by and went into Salem. But like, you know, we were like talking about partnership. And he was like, you know, it'd be really cool, Steve. He's like, you get some high school seniors to go hang out with some of our seniors and you could really help your kids from like the northwest suburbs of Chicago, help our kids with writing like college applications. That'd be really cool. And I was like, yeah, man, we could totally do that. And he goes, you know what else? It'd be awesome for our kids to go hang out with your kids. And I was like, yeah, man. And he's like, you know what we could teach your kids? And I was like, I mean, a ton of stuff. I had no idea where he was going, but I was like, yeah, there's a ton of stuff, man. He goes, we'll teach your kids how to survive. And I was like, dang, dude, we'll teach them how to like get on a bus and walk through 3 gang neighborhoods. We'll teach them how to pray as they walk by the homes. We'll teach them how to survive. Your kids don't even know how to survive. So again, that's just one little story. But I go, again, your team and your crew, your people, these leaders that don't have the platforms that some of my friends have, but they deserve them because they're doing it the right way. And I think this day we're going to start looking and turning our attention, not to the massive stages, but to the people who are just for this day, for this age, leading in remarkable ways.
Dude, that's so good, man. Man, as we like, one of the things you just said, brother, was that gave me, to be honest, more hope than I've had for the last number of weeks. Was that idea that churches are thinking about relaunching and reopening in that way. Now, here's why. Because what I see then is we got work to do, right, brother? So yeah, I already wrote you in. Board chairman, you're in, bro, right? But we have this window to remind the church, listen, remember the things that started you on this movement. Because I don't believe any pastor like started stuff going, I can't wait to get all rich and I can't wait to be so stressed out and I can't wait to, not have any accountability. No, nobody starts that way, right? But they work themselves into the system and into the space where they're like, oh my gosh, like how are we going to keep this thing going? And this is a really great reset. So we have this window of opportunity to speak back into those spaces and to go, hey, let's go back. Let's go back to the values that we all started, the passion that we all started with, and we can restart. And in that sense, man, we want to come alongside the church to see that future, which is here right now, right? To value again, especially the youth. How are we going to reach them? How are we going to invite them in? How are we going to really be honest? And I love this when you talked about the leader, looking inward, right? And the character it takes to do that. If we can do that as an institution right now and just be really honest with some of the numbers and not try to go back to how it used to be, that's one of the phrases that gets me the most nervous. Leaders just going like, I just can't wait till it gets back to normal. And I just go, dude, that's gone. Let's look for the opportunity now. And if we have this window, this window, it's great. One thing, dude, I'll share with you and those who are listening. We're working on something called the Million Youth Exploration Project. It's with Kara Powell and Fuller Youth Institute and a bunch of other national leaders. And we're saying, how can we engage 100,000 churches to prioritize youth discipleship? And that's one of my things where I'm like, hey, if we can press the church and cheer it on and help these leaders realize that the future is here right now, that we can change the things that need to be changed, and that the worst has already happened. I think that's a big part of it. Is what stopped a lot of this movement in the past a month ago is really just the fear of what if I lose everything, right? Like if I say this, if I stand up for this justice, or if I say this from the pulpit, like what if 10% of our people leave? Well, you know what I mean? And how are we going to get, all the stuff that you talked about? Dude, we're here. Yeah. So now's the time to be courageous and just go, okay, well, we're here. Let's change the things that need to be changed, man. I love that.
Yeah.
Bro.
Well, and I think on top of that, if you remember like the movie Blue Chips, Nick Nolte, Shaq, there's like this one line like where he's like, I don't care if the team knows our plays. Like, yeah, like I'll give them our plays. It doesn't matter. It's like, we're going to run our play. We're going to run our play. Yeah. And I think what's fascinating right now is if you go back to like the greatest sermon ever, Sermon on the Mount, Jesus drops that prayer, right? The Lord's Prayer. He's asked a simple question in the book of Luke, like, teach us how to pray. And when you ask a rabbi how to pray, you're literally asking him like, what's your mission? What are you begging God to see happen? And so Jesus just offers up these words, 63 words that are just insanely spiritual and practical. And spiritual, yeah, man, I want heaven to invade earth. Spiritual, yes, like I need daily bread. Spiritual, yeah, I need to forgive my debts. But also practical, because when you're living in Roman occupation, you're going to lose your land and you don't know where food's coming. You need bread and you need life. So Jesus dies, resurrects, ascends into heaven. And now you've got these like young high schoolers, these young leaders who are like leading this new movement. And what do? They go to incarnate the Lord's Prayer, and they center it around practices, around bread, around sharing, making sure that like nobody loses their land, around teaching, around fellowship and prayer. And like the thing explodes. So the thing I keep thinking about is almost like a trellis that you put next to a tree that's growing, like to strengthen it, is what are the practices that the urban youth workers are instilling in their students that are going to be the game changers for the suburban megachurches? What are the practices like, man, this is what we have committed and doubled down on, and this is our play, and I don't care because the enemy can't stop this. You know, like, so I think those practices of, dude, this is it. That's the thing that I think is going to teach us moving forward to not become a museum and not become a monument, but truly be the mission that God has for us.
Yeah. So good, man. Dude, Steve, thank you so much, brother, for your time, dude. And just giving us that hope. Like, honestly, man, I hadn't heard that piece about the church, about relaunching like that. It gives me a ton of hope, because at least they're thinking about that, you know, these leaders are thinking about that. And we got some work to do. I think we can shape the future, right? And I believe it's here right now. And so when we talk about, you know, the end of the mega church as we know it, I hope it's really on that. What I'm hoping for is that pivot. And you so eloquently just shared that with us, man. I love that, bro. Can I
say something real quick?
Yeah,
this is why what you do and your team does matters. And anybody listening, anybody who's tuning in right now, like if you're a youth worker, dude, thank you for what you're doing. Thanks for just like riding with this crew. But I think also, if some of you are in kind of maybe like you don't know much about urban youth workers, or maybe you're like, man, like this is what they're doing. I just say, like, as someone who supports it financially, I just say this is something worthy to get behind, because what they're doing is literally, I'm telling you this, Tommy, I'm telling you this, and I believe this to my core. What you and the team, Cherie and the rest of the crew are doing, you will help the church pivot. If the church surrenders and the hands and hearts and minds are open, we are going to have an insanely good ride. We're going to need resources. We're going to need people who are listening to this podcast are like, dude, I'll get behind that. I'll see that. I'll support that. And I'm just challenging anybody to listen. Man, if you could just help, that'd be amazing. But two, be praying over this guy, be praying over this movement, because there's so much that we have to listen, to learn, to grow, to help reach these youth who are literally the movers and shakers in the seasons and decades to come.
Man,
sorry, I cut you off.
I love that, bro. Well, no, I was just going to let people know, man, like if you appreciated Steve, like tell us some of the projects you're working on right now. Like what are some things that people can dial in with you? And you know, Steve's also an author, this Invitational Life. And so you could check that out. I know, look at your face. He's mad at me because it took me 16 months to buy his book and read it. Was it that, bro?
I was a little bit longer, but it's cool. It's cool.
Bro, I'm sorry. I'll never live that down. No. But no, dude, share with us a little bit kind of what you're doing so people can dial in.
Yeah. So I think a couple of things. One is I just have a heart for the local church, and I have a heart for really helping people encounter who Christ truly is.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, some of the things that I've been working on, if you follow on Instagram at Steve Ryan Carter, on Facebook, you just like type in Steve Carter, I'll pop up. And I've been doing these evening Psalms and just really helping just one Psalm a day as we go through COVID-19. It'll take the anxiety away. Maybe not so much, but it's been super helpful. Second thing that I'm doing is one of my good friend Sam Acho plays for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Mm-hmm. And then ESPN like anchor Sam Ponder. She's like on NFL Countdown. The three of us have a podcast called Home Team. It's where we just talk about faith, family, sports, and culture. And so you can totally check that out on any podcast. And then I just teach. I love teaching, and I love raising up communicators. I just believe that there's power in the spoken word. God looked into the chaos and he spoke words and created order. And I think that more than anything, whether in urban context, suburban context, we need the power of a spoken word that brings light, brings truth, brings hope, brings grace, and brings justice to the forefront. So those are the things that I'm working on. And you can follow along at steveryancarter.com.
So good, man. Hey, thank you so much, brother, for your time, man. We'll keep on rocking.
Thank you, Tommy.
Get out of here, bro.
Love you, bro.
All right,
love you guys. Grace and peace.
If you enjoyed what you heard today, we don't want to leave you empty-handed. So here's a couple resources to help you shape the future. Get access to our latest leadership resource by visiting uywi.org and join our email list.